In this panel, we are going to talk about decentralized identity, and we will try to get a feel about why it's that important. So guys, I will start with a basic question. What is identity in general, and not necessarily in the context of Web3 and blockchain? Who wants to tackle that one?
Yeah, so I guess I can start to define what is identity. So I guess the identity as we know it in the real world is, okay, we have the government, we have a centralized entity that issues some papers like our passport, our identity card, and then someone has to verify and trust these entities when they verify your papers. So that's what defines us, but of course we have also social interaction, what we do on social media. Basically, identity is a lot of things, but yeah.
Okay, someone want to add more about that, or?
Yes, so the goal here is to change in Web3 this kind of identity. Is it okay now? Okay, so the goal here is to change in Web3 this kind of identities and to transform it in what you do in real life, what you do on chain, what you do in your everyday life, because at the end of the day, this is what defines you. This is not a paper, this is what defines you, what you do in life.
Okay, and what are the specificities of identity when it comes to Web3 and blockchain in particular?
Do you hear me? Yeah. So I think that the word is ownership. So mainly the big difference between traditional identity and Web3 identity is that you own your identity. So you still have an issuer, like we discussed about passport, or you may think about your university degree or something else. But at the end, you can on-chain prove something and own something. Social graph are a great example of that, when today we don't own our data whenever we interact with Facebook or Twitter. But maybe in the future we have some initiative like Lens protocol that will permit you to move your social graph whenever you go.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can add something, I think the best way to picture that is that in Web2 you have one account for every app that you're connecting to, and with Web3 you can have like this single account that you're building your reputation, whatever you do on the internet or whatever you do in life, and then every time you connect to a new decentralized application, you bring your reputation with you, and you decide to show to the application, like, okay, I can show that I have more than 18 years old to the application.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. Arnaud, I'm curious to hear your opinion about the philosophical aspect of identity and the link with the values of the blockchain.
Like it was said before, in traditional identity, you are not the owner of your identity, because it's the state who defines who you are, what you can do with your identity. And like you said before, in decentralized, in Web3, your identity is identified with your actions, with the protocol you use, with the development you contribute to. And what decentralized identity can bring is aggregate all these actions to your wallet or to your identity and bring it with you to bring you some advantage, scoring, and all the things we will discuss.
Okay. Guys, some of you are building some primitives related to identity and reputation, and some of you are building use cases that could benefit from those primitives. So can you explain us like what is the link between primitives and the usage of those primitives?
Yeah, so basically I'm building StarkNetCC, and the goal of StarkNetCC is to be in the center of the identity in StarkNet. The first thing that we focus, our main focus currently is naming service, and then we want to be in the center of all the things that are linked to identity. So, for example, Matthias is building another thing that he will explain us later, and what we want to do is to be in the center of what Matthias is building and to interact with it, and to do that with all the protocol that have a link with identity.
Okay, Mentor, can you tell us about, like, specifically for DeFi use cases, what identity can bring to those use cases, and why is that helpful for DeFi? Because you have a lot of experience in DeFi, so can you give a bit of background about that?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I believe that the big missing thing in DeFi is how we fix those over-collateralized loans. And the solution stands behind decentralized ID. Because if we want to grow the volume, the liquidity, we need to figure out how we can, as a lender, attest that we are lending assets to someone who has meet certain conditions, and like with a credit score. And I believe that it will unleash the true power of DeFi, because right now the lending, borrowing market is really limited by those conditions. So hopefully someday we will see a credit score system, maybe leveraging ZKPs. That's also an interesting topic where you can leverage both decentralized identity and zero knowledge proof to, for example, attest that someone has this net worth, this revenue, without revealing it.
Okay, cool. What about Carbonable? What are the use cases where identity could be useful, or also reputation?
Yeah, so like everybody know about climate change and the impact of carbon we emit with our systems. So we know that there are more and more pressure on the population to be less carbon emissions. And what can bring decentralized identity is Carbonable can be a provider with actually to bring the labels of your neutral carbon emissions, and you can attach it to your decentralized identity and bring it to receive some advantage on the system, because you are the owner of your identity will prove that you are neutral carbons.
Okay. I see like there are a lot of synergies between the use cases, the primitives. How you guys see the challenges of this wonderful thing, which is the composability of protocols? What are the main challenges you are facing as a builder of primitives and protocol, and as a consumer of those protocols?
Yeah. So I think like the most important thing is that right now, like especially for on-chain activity, this is split across all the different chains, and we want to aggregate all the data. Like we don't want to, people will be using StarkNet, will be using many different chains, and we want to take that into account. So what we're doing actually is that we're trying to put everything on StarkNet and aggregate all the actions that you're doing on any chain, and that without relying on Oracle. So basically, if you have some certificate, like, let's say your passport is on Optimism, and let's say your credit carbon attestation is on Ethereum mainnet. On StarkNet, we can prove that you have these both things and put them on a central point and make this available on-chain to anyone. And so StarkNetCC can leverage that and put them on your identity. So yeah, aggregation is very, very important, especially in the world of blockchain, but especially if you want to get off-chain data inside. We need some kind of central point. We need to have an infrastructure that allows anyone to select the different pieces of our identity and create system out of that.
One of the problem, one of the big challenges that I see is that we do not have to duplicate what already exists in Web 2 in Web 3. What do I mean by that? I mean that we can, for example, have badge issuers that can change a bit the algorithms to, their own interest, to give more badge to this or these people. So the goal of badge issuers to me is to be, of course, open source and to be as decentralized as we can. Because if it's not open source, we cannot believe this badge. So yeah.
Okay, makes sense. To me, there is an important aspect when it comes to identity and reputation. Do you think that user care about that? And if not, how do you forecast the education around that, specifically for your project, for example? Well, how do you see this kind of education for users to make them understand the importance of those aspects?
I think users will understand it when when their reputation will enable them to access to specific things based on their reputation. Like credit score is the best example. If you know that if you're building your reputation, you will have access to specific perks, then you're going, okay, I can access that because I've done this action. Okay, that's really cool for the users. Yeah.
So, okay, you think like we will start with the model with an incentives-based model, and then what will be the next step? For example, you mentioned ZKP. So, for example, for privacy, I think like for the moment there are no actual incentives to care about privacy. But can you like take a look forward 2 years or 3 years or in 5 years? How do you see the big challenges of privacy and the education on that front? Arnaud, maybe? Yeah.
There's not only money incentives for them to understand. For example, if a guy built his reputation on chain without even noticing it, just playing games, for example, and another game that is launching, give him access because he's a guy that played a lot of games, he's gonna see that his reputation, all the work that he made on chain, will bring value to him without needing DeFi or money involved.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe one more thing. I think the topic is really correlated to privacy. About your question, those users care about those topics. My point of view is a bit pessimistic. I believe that until we don't have some big drama, there will not be self-awareness or something like that. So I hope I am wrong, but if you look, you still have billions of users on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. So the technical side is a discussion, but on the onboarding side, we need to see. Maybe in 5 years, in 10 years, people will be self-awareness and understand the thing.
Okay. As builders, do you guys see some specific, some StarkNet specific features that are helpful to build identity systems, or features that are missing to build those systems, as a protocol builder or consumer?
I think that the main thing that we're using are storage proofs. So storage proof is definitely a very powerful tool that is unique to StarkNet right now. Even though it will be usable in other chains in the future, storage proof is a very powerful concept to aggregate, again, this reputation from all the different places in a trustless way. Like having a trustless system is very important, especially for a protocol where you want a solid basis to build things on top of it. Yeah.
Can you explain more about the concept of those and how to use them?
Yeah, so storage proof basically is a way to easily prove, for instance, that you have an NFT on another chain without having to communicate with that chain. You can prove that you have done this certain on-chain action, let's say 2 years ago, that you had minted a CryptoPunk in the beginning, and this without any trust. You don't have to rely on anything. If you have done it, you can prove it, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, cool. I think one important thing to consider is the standardization. I think it will be really important to fully enable the power of the composability and to have very powerful protocols. So, are you guys willing to be involved in the standardization of those primitives? How do you see that?
Yeah, so what can help with StarkNet is that there's not a lot of protocols here, so we can talk, we can have and find synergies. It's an advantage to be early, and it's what we're doing between StarkNet ID and Astrally. But in the whole crypto ecosystem, of course, we'll need a lot of communication. I think this is also one of the main challenge that we have. Make some communication between protocols that are doing the same job, and yeah.
I think, like from what I see from the ecosystems, like indeed there is strong communication, and like Sil said this morning, this is very folk history of StarkNet, and I totally agree. But to open it more to the external world, I think we need to be able to be more active in terms of standardization, etc. Because otherwise you can miss information. Because you guys are all involved actively in the ecosystem, so you all share the information, but it can be a bit obscure for people from the outside. So yeah, I think we will need more standardization around those primitives.
And if I can add something about normalization, if we don't do it first, soon will become the regulation which will impose by regulation about identifier, KOA. We see already that the regulation want to bring KOAC in Web3, which is a nonsense. So we need to bring this normalization, this to be taken by the regulation as what we want.
Okay, cool. I think that's pretty much it, unless you want to...
Maybe something I wanted to add, a very great use cases about reputation and identity is governance. We don't talk a lot about that, but it's a very important subject. Right now, most governance systems are pretty much flawed. If you look at how they work, basically, you have big delegates that have all the voting power, and they can just take all the decisions in this big DAO. So reputation can help to enable non-bureaucratic systems, and that's a very cool thing. Also, on the same note, it can help to achieve cyber-resistant systems for people doing... Right now, most airdrops are totally flawed as well. So as soon as you need some cyber-resistance, you need to know that there are real people behind your application. Then reputation and decentralized identity becomes a very important topic.
Okay. To conclude, can you give an update about your respective project, and if you want to pass message to the community? Yeah, you want to start, Ben?
Yeah, so as I said, StarkNet ID is currently the identities naming the identity service of StarkNet, and our goal is to be in the center of identity in StarkNet. And the first feature that we are building in order to do that is naming service, but then we're going to add things on top of that. And actually the goal is to integrate all the other protocols that have a link with identity on StarkNet first, and then we'll see.
Good. And thanks for the Bob, by the way. Very cool.
Waiting mine. So we are building Avenue. It's a decentralized exchange protocol, not public yet, but we plan to build some foundation of reputation that can amplify and improve the quality of exchanges.
Okay.
Yeah, from Carbonable, we are more about using decentralized identity from what is building on StarkNet, and we will use it for individuals who want to finance and decarbonize their assets, but also to bring decentralized identity for protocols, for other protocols who want to bring neutral carbon of emissions of their blockchains.
Okay, good. Matthias?
Yeah, so actually what we basically do is that we build a whole infrastructure for people to leverage on-chain reputation, and then on top of this, we'll have projects that want to distribute tokens, NFTs, to help them to target the right users based on their reputation across all the different chains.
Then, thank you.
Thank you.